Hi YouTube. Today's video is about why I'm never going to call somebody a bigot again. And to be clear, people can obviously make bigoted remarks. They can act in a bigoted fashion. They can hold bigoted beliefs. So when I say that I'm not going to call somebody a bigot anymore, I'm not saying that they can't or won't do any of those things. I'm saying that instead of attacking their character, I am going to attack their actions, their statements, their ideas, their beliefs. Because I believe that if you start to attack somebody's character, you're going to quickly put them on the defensive. The conversation is going to shut down, and there's not going to be any constructive dialogue. And, of course, people who hold bigoted beliefs or say bigoted things are not necessarily going to be open or receptive to change. In which case, there's not a lot of point in spending your time trying to, get them to come around to see your point of view. But if you call somebody a bigot, it's not that you're hurting their feelings or you're being mean to them or anything like that. You're losing an opportunity to help them maybe see things in a different way. And that, I think, is important, because if we want to see change in the world, saying you're a bad person is maybe not the best way to go about doing that, even if the person holds kind of reprehensible views, does bad things, whatever, because fundamentally I believe that people are good. People, have the capacity for kindness. They have the capacity for generosity, for tolerance, for acceptance. And I think the problem is we want to force our point of view on somebody else. And it's just that somebody is a bigot if they don't agree, when the reality is probably more that they just don't understand. Or maybe they're afraid, or maybe it conflicts with some other belief they have. But calling them a bigot isn't going to change any of that. Changing the framing of the conversation might. And so, for example, a lot of people don't understand being transgender. They think it's a choice. They think it's unnatural. They think all sorts of vulgar things that I see in my YouTube comments all the time. But a great analogy that I heard somebody share is to pick your dominant hand and write down a sentence. Say, first thing you're going to do tomorrow morning when you wake up. Now take your non-dominant hand and write that same sentence. And how does that feel? It feels weird. It feels different. It feels forced, unnatural, whatever. And that's kind of like what being trans feels like when you're assigned male at birth, but you know that you're actually a woman. Everybody is telling you to write with your left hand, but you know that you're right-handed. You didn't choose to be right-handed. You just ended up right-handed. And that kind of analogy can help maybe make people understand being trans a lot easier than trying to explain the difference between gender identity, sexuality, sex, biology, things like that. And that is ultimately the point of these conversations, is to try to find some sort of common ground, some common understanding, and create allies, tolerance, acceptance, and change. And so I will admit that I've called people bigots in the past. I've used that word a lot. I've accused people of bigotry. I will still probably say that, people are acting transphobic. They're acting racist. They're acting in a bigoted fashion. But I'm not going to assume that that's their character, rather than that's a product of how they were socialized, rather than that's a product of being taught the wrong beliefs, and having those beliefs reinforced by the people and institutions around them. Because I want to create change, and I think that also means that I need to change. And so that is why I'm not going to use the word bigot anymore. I'm still going to address people who make offensive remarks, but I'm going to try to do it in a more constructive fashion, because you need to be the change you want to see in the world. You need to be, unfortunately, the better person, the bigger person. You need to, turn the other cheek. And I think that explains my position. Hopefully that makes sense. But let's have a discussion here in the comments if you'd like. And go from there.